Welcome back, everybody. This is not a Malazan video. This is not even a only books video, I suspect, because I'm here to talk about separating the art from the artist and maybe even a bit of cancel culture. We'll see how that goes. So basically, Ola the Reading Witch did a video on separating the art from the artist, mostly focused on authors and books, obviously. And I watched it and I found it interesting. And she also linked to, she got inspired by a book on, by a video on mostly cancel culture by Books with Brittany, which she linked, and I also watched that one, and then I had even more thoughts, and then I figured I'll just do what I do best, which is mansplaining, or at least rambling on the internet. And since it's almost noon, I figured I could open a beer and talk a bit about my thoughts on that. So yeah, let's do that. Cheers. So I'll try to structure this. We'll see how that goes. And I will first start talking about the idea of separating the art from the artist in a way, and then I'll go into maybe also some of the more cancel culture aspects of that later on. And like the reason why I feel I might actually have a bit to say about these things is that, as I obviously mentioned before, is I do run a small underground record label, and I've organized concerts and a small festival before as well. So I am active in another scene where this is obviously a problem, which is I also write music reviews. It's all for heavy metal, and I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that, but there is obviously also the question of how you can separate the art from the artist within that area, especially recently because of political stuff. So this might edge a bit into that as well. And I figured I could, draw from my experiences, or I don't want to call them experiences, but, draw examples from one part and use them to illustrate something from the other field of art, maybe, to make things clearer, because sometimes it helps understanding issues when you actually look at something similar outside your normal box you're usually in. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's start with separating the art from the artist. Now that's like an old discussion that has become more, and this is going to be something that I'll be coming back to again and again. This is a discussion that has been around for a while, but with the advent of media, social media in particular, we have the debate has accelerated enormously, because something that is important here is separating the art from the artist is something you need to start thinking hard about once you know more about the artist. And that's obviously not exactly the case for a lot of older artists. We can't really separate the author of, we can't separate Homer from the Iliad that easily, because we don't know anything about Homer. And even if we, start figuring out that it's a bunch of people or whatever, we will not actually find Homer's Facebook posts where he did blackface so we can cancel him for that. That's not gonna happen. So the whole question becomes more prevalent in recent years. It's even especially, with I find this, like, it's very interesting from the heavy metal perspective. I'm going to go there for a moment. Is that a lot of older musicians that were really sort of successful and whatnot in the 80s have egregious political views. Egregious for me, that is, because obviously they're of an older generation and so forth. Well, some of them have like terrible opinions even for, like, boomers that, like, 50 plus, 60 plus year old people from a conservative background. They are going further than that. But in general, the point is they are musicians. They are not people with a degree in political science. Their political hot takes might just not be, the most thought through things. And probably most of us have these kind of hot takes and all the time. The difference is that nowadays we can see all of that. It's like even in the 90s and early 2000s, it's like sometimes a musician would actually say something really dumb in an interview with a magazine, but if he didn't do that, or the editors then cut out that dumb thing, we as consumers, and I hate the word consumers here, but we as readers, listeners, as fans, we didn't know about that kind of thing. So there's a lot of that going on, and it's very, very likely that most artists whose art we enjoy through the ages had opinions and ideas that we personally would not like to, have something to do with. That's just how it is. So it's more a question of how much you know and how much you can stomach. And now we come to like a very important thing for me, because I've dealt with that before. It's like you enjoy something enormously, and then you find out the person who created that is a dickhead. And there, that's basically the actual, not the actual, that's basically what it boils down to for me, is like, it's a personal thing. Sometimes I can ignore it better, sometimes I can't ignore it, sometimes it really, detracts me from enjoying something that I have enjoyed before, whatever, that just happens. It's something that in the end is very personal. It depends on your personal history, on your personal experience, your personal history with that particular piece of art, with that particular artist, and so forth. It's like, if a specific book means a ton to you because of its specific like story, its content, and so forth, or you read it in, I don't know, when you were 15 and it was like really influential for you, those memories, all of that stuff will stay with you. Now, they might be tarnished when you'll way later meet the author, or read something else by that author, or read their political posts online or whatever. And that can really hurt you, like hurt me, and harm like my appreciation of something. But that other bit will always stay, that those memories, those experiences that we have with a specific piece of art, right? That's the critical thing there, is that separating the art from the artist is very, very difficult, if at all possible, once you know enough about a specific artist. You can't unsee, unhear, or unfeel knowledge once you have it. You can't go back beyond that. And the problem is that while we all can, up to a certain point, on a rational level, split between the art and the artist and say, yeah, that's a piece of art and so forth, and maybe that artist created that piece of art way before he became an absolute dickhead, we can do that. But art appreciation is to a large part an emotional thing, and we can't control our emotional appreciation of something, our emotional response. We can't control that completely by rational thought. That just doesn't work. So separating the art from the artist is, I guess, in the only way it is possible is if we appreciate a specific piece of art and we then consciously decide to never ever read anything about the person who created that. If we appreciate, just look at art that is created by an anonymous artist. That's the only way we can separate the art from the artist, because otherwise we can't fully separate those two things. It might, depending on what kind of thing it is, that might detract from art appreciation. It can get easier or whatever, but we can't fully do that ever. That's just not possible. All right, let's go into some details and some examples here. And go in like both directions, I guess, with books and music. Like the big recent one for me definitely is a music example. I'm talking about, it's been a while, but it has recently blown up, and that is, well, go political. That is the heavy metal band Iced Earth. Iced Earth was really formative for me. They're like one of those traditional heavy metal bands that got super big in the mid of the 90s, when traditional heavy metal was not really the thing. Their musical career has been on a downward slope ever since then, to be honest. But it's one of those first heavy metal bands I watched. I listened to their horror show tour concert in 2002 was my third or second heavy metal concert I ever attended, and it was absolutely impressive. So I have history with that band, a lot of history. But it turns out their main man, guitar player John Schaefer, has become first very conservative, which is fine. It's not my political view, but being conservative is not illegal. He has then turned into a conspiracy nut job over time, further and further with that, and it ended up with him being one of the people storming the Capitol in January. So there's that. And you can't unsee and unhear that. And a lot of people have struggled with that and are now, can I still listen to this band? And if I still listen to this band, I still enjoy the music, what does that say about me as a person? This is like the questions, like how much of the artist's ideas do I support when I appreciate their art? Now, for me personally, I've kind of drawn the line with Iced a couple of years ago already, when the conspiracy stuff got too wacky for me. It obviously also helped that their music didn't get any better over time, so that it's kind of easy to bash them now, and a lot of people do that now when I feel that's not the point. My point is that when I go to an album like, I don't know, Something Wicked or Dark Saga, stuff that I listened to when I was 15 or whatever, that stuff still touches me because there's a lot of memories on there, and the vehemence that some people, and that will go back when we're talking more about the cancel culture, is that it feels like a personal attack to me in a way. So can I still listen to that stuff? Yes. But when I listen to it, do I still enjoy it the way I enjoyed it back then? Of course not, because you never enjoy something the way you enjoyed it like 15 years ago. That just doesn't work unless you're very, very drunk and then your experience is blurred by alcohol or whatever drugs you've taken. That's not the point. The point being, of course, knowing these things, knowing what the participants of, like what the musicians of that band turned into, how they behaved recently, all of that detracts from my enjoyment of the music because I can't unthink and, more importantly, unfeel that. But that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person for still sometimes listening to Iced Earth. Does it mean that I should still support the artist? That's a different question. That's what we're going to get to when we're talking about the canceling thing, because canceling is about support. Right, so there's that example. Separating the art from the artist. Let's go into books for a moment. There's obviously the big racist elephant in the room for all people who are into fantasy, or at least older fantasy and pulp stuff, is H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft was a racist, a bad one. Like, more racist than a lot of other people at the time, is what I'm trying to say here. It's like you look at your Robert E. Howards or whatnot. Of course, they also had eugenic ideas and racism in their like makeup because it's 1930s America. I'm not saying the 1930s Germany was better, right? But the point being, they obviously the acceptable level at the time, I don't want acceptable level of racism sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. It's like you didn't stick out as being obnoxiously racist that easily back in 1930s. Howard was obnoxiously racist even back then. Not Howard. Robert E. Howard wasn't that egregiously racist, just a bit, but H.P. Lovecraft was egregiously racist even back then. And it's something that sometimes comes through in some of his stories. And that makes enjoying some of these stories very hard for me. On the other hand, in some of his stories, it just doesn't come through. And luckily, since I have not gone into H.P. Lovecraft studies like some people do, so I have not read all his other like problematic letters and shit like that. So I know he's racist. I know the story about the cat named after the N-word. I know all of that, and it's terrible. It's even, his real cat was named like that, and the cat shows up in one of his stories. I think it's The Rats in the Wall. Probably The Rats in the Wall. I know that I find it doesn't, make me enjoy that specific story. But I can on a rational level. It might be easier to do that with books than it is with music. I can on a rational level, sit back and say, yeah, well, but it's the 1930s, or yeah, but the rest of this is good. So there's that rational level that I feel might be easier with something. Also, I came to reading Lovecraft relatively late in life. I didn't read it as a kid, and like separating these things when you with something that you read as a kid is obviously more difficult because it's more formative. I, I, I was already aware of Lovecraft's racism when I read his stories, is what I'm trying to say. So that experience was all the time in there. Did I separate it? Probably sometimes in the stories where it doesn't matter, but it's you can't read The Call of Cthulhu and not get freaked out by his treatment of people of color in that story, because their like background, their ethnic background, is linked to them being evil. And that's the problem there. And he does that, and it's very difficult to unread that once you are aware of the fact. I mean, it's even if you're not aware of Lovecraft's background, it's basically you read that story nowadays. You read that story and you don't say like, interesting, why are all the evil people of color? Is that not slightly wrong? I feel that's like for someone who is semi-educated nowadays, that should be obvious. But once again, that's one of these examples. Another one where definitely reading a specific book because I'm bad at separating art and artist, as I said before, would be Dan Simmons. I read Flashback by Dan Simmons, and it was terrible. Now, obviously, it has aged really well, really badly, which I'm glad for, but it made me super angry at the time because it's a really shitty, conservative, right-wing conspiracy book. And before that, I really enjoyed the Hyperion, Endymion, and Ilias and Olympus books. I really enjoyed that. And then I read Flashback, and I'm like, you're blaming Barack Obama for the downfall of the United States and accommodating Vladimir Putin? You fucking asshole. That's dumb. It really made me angry. And I've certainly struggled with picking up a Dan Simmons book after that, because I can't do these things that easily. I can't separate fully these things because this is happening now, and I feel the time component is really important there, because it obviously didn't help that Simmons posted like on his blog a sort of not apology kind of thing, which was really bad. So that kind of thing doesn't help. And once again, it's the context that makes separating art from artist so difficult in a way, because the more context we have, the more, and it's, I guess that's the problem right there, is that what you can separate the art from the artist only if you know about the artist, because otherwise art and artist are the same thing, right? Because you only have one thing. The more you know about the artist as the artist, and differing from the art, the more you know, the more knowing about the artist, the more you know about the artist, it will impact your appreciation of the art. It makes the effort of it so much bigger and more impossible, because the more you know, the more you can't unknow, and that's sort of the difficulty here, which once again, comes back to the idea of classics. Obviously, we can assume that people like, I don't know, Dante did have quite the problematic opinions on a lot of things. You can be sure of that. But you don't know about it unless you study Italian literature of the 14th century. So for most people, it's very easy to appreciate the Divine Comedy just on that level, and not need to separate the problematic attitudes of that artist or that author from the art. So I feel it's definitely a temporary, not a temporary thing, but a thing that is more difficult with our contemporary artists in general, because they are here. It's much easier to actually pick up what they do around that. So that's my first thoughts on separating the art from the artist. to cut it short, you can't completely unless you actually, you can't completely because art appreciation is an emotional thing and you can't control your emotions fully by rational thoughts. So even when you're aware of something like that, and it's a very personal thing because it will impact each and every one of us personally in a very, very different way. So there's that. It's personal and you can't completely do it. You can figure out, each of us has to figure out how much they're how much they want to know about the background of an artist and how much that will then influence our appreciation of a specific piece of art. But, and this is where we come to the cancel culture part of it. This is as I said, a very personal thing and not impacted by anything else but our own decisions. All right, let's go into cancel culture. Now, here's a bunch of things that we need to figure out. Cancel culture is about 2 or 3 things. It's about influence. It's about it's about business. It's about, money. And it's about image, self-image mostly, from where I'm standing. And let's make it clear, cancel culture is not exactly a thing. It's more, and I want to make this clear, cancel culture is usually used by people from a more conservative, right-wing kind of background that want to claim, that want to feel bad about getting backlash for their problematic takes. That's not what cancel culture is, all right? And it's not a thing. But now let's look into what we need to know and understand about cancel culture. I'll still use the word, even though it shouldn't be used that much. Okay, now let's look at what we actually have. What we have is nowadays the concept of platform, which means a person, each and every one of us, even me, has a platform. I have a small platform. I have at this point 375 subscribers. Thank you very, very much. So I have a small platform. Someone else has a large platform. I don't know. Let's take J.K. Rowling for this because she's a good example for it. J.K. Rowling has a huge platform. And the important thing there is that it's the platform of the person J.K. Rowling. It's not the platform, and it's not exactly the platform of Harry Potter. They are obviously linked, and her achievements as the writer of Harry Potter got her a larger platform than my achievements as doing nothing gave me my 375 subscribers. Thank you very much. The point is, platform means that you have a sphere of potential influence, a number of people that you can reach with your thoughts. And even before social media, we all had platforms, right? My platform before social media was my 5 friends in the bar that I meet, in the pub that I talk to. Someone else's platform before social media, for example, for a writer, was either the people that read their books, obviously, but also, if people write an opinion piece in a newspaper, that's a platform. And the thing that happened with the advent of mostly social media is that the separation between this is fun, separation between art and artist on the artist's part became a thing, because now we have the personal platform of an artist as the person, J.K. Rowling. We also probably have, because I don't follow her, because why would I? We also have the platform of Harry Potter, which would be of the Harry Potter franchise, which would be obviously, hopefully, vetted by a legal team and run by people who understand about social media. So we have the separation between art and artist happening in real time, because we suddenly have the platform of the artist, of the personal platform of the artist, can be a different platform than the platform that you have as their writing, in a way. And that brings problems, because with platform comes responsibility. And this is where this is what it is, what it really is about, mostly for me at least, when we talk about arts and artists. The point is that with platform comes responsibility. If I have like 5 friends that I meet in the bar, and they, for whatever reason, think I'm the smartest one of them, and they believe all the stuff I say. If I tell them lies, they then believe them and act on those lies. That's on my head. That's my responsibility. If I, every Wednesday, go into a bar and preach racist bullshit to 5 people, they then go out and beat someone up, that's on my head. That's the point. And now you multiply that up to a platform of a couple of million followers, and you post bullshit. Chances are a larger part of those people will actually take what you say to heart and then act on it in a way. And that's where these things go on. That's where deplatforming is a thing, where sometimes it can be there can be made a reasonable argument to deplatform someone for doing that. Now, where are these? If someone uses their platform to spread harmful messages, willingly harmful messages, to a large number of people, the argument can be made that those people should get, backlash for that, because we're in the country. We live, most of us hopefully live in places where free speech is a thing. And free speech doesn't mean you can say anything unopposed. It just means you can say most things without legal consequences. Unless you start like doing things that are legally that can have legal consequences, like slander and stuff like that. As long as you don't do that, you can say whatever you want, but everyone else can do the same. So if you say bullshit to 3 million people, it means a lot of people read that, they realize that you said bullshit, and they can then tell you that you put out some really dumb shit. You get the famous shitstorm, and that will feel really bad for you if you're at the receiving end. No doubts about that. But the point is, you've earned that by putting out a dumb take to 3 million people. You're the only fucking person that is to blame for that. You have to live with that. That's why it is about being responsible with that. Now, does that mean that every, piece of like that comes, and I guess that's the difficult issue there with the cancel culture problem there, is that the scale of that can be more than can be handled by an individual person. Because getting, 5,000 messages that tell you that send just like pure hate to you, you can't deal with that. You can't deal with that as a person, and that's a problem. We need to address that bit of it. But that doesn't mean that you being sent all those messages, or that you being sent these messages or that backlash was, unprovoked. It usually wasn't completely unprovoked, unless you're obviously visibly female on the internet, because then you get unopposed hate unprovoked hate all the time, because men are assholes. That's just a fact. But what I was trying to get at, and I realize this is very rambly and unstructured here, is that with platform comes responsibility, and no one is being cancelled for saying, in J.K. Rowling's case, transphobic bullshit on the internet. She gets a lot of backlash, and that may hurt her personally. But that's all of it. Maybe some people will stop reading her books. Maybe some people will stop following her. But that's that. That's not being cancelled. The only thing that would be being cancelled would be if her Twitter account would be blocked for that. And that's up to Twitter and no one else. And if she, they're a private company, they can do whatever the fuck they want. So that's not the whatever mob canceling her or anyone else. So cancel culture in that way doesn't work. Now we come to the next bit there. That's the economy bit. And that's where a lot of these like boycott things come through, where cancel culture, if you may call it that, or deplatforming has an effect. It's like someone is held accountable. The idea is to talk about holding someone accountable, is held accountable for their actions. Now the question is, how does that work? The problem is, if like most of us are assholes sometimes and do stuff that we regret later on, usually we deal with it in a way. The problem that we have with artists mostly, and probably also creators on the internet, obviously also creators on the internet, is that the income of these people, obviously not me because I don't get money, but the income, the economic survival of such people is directly connected to their platform. So anything you do to their platform has very direct consequences. For most people, saying something dumb on the internet doesn't mean they get fired. Yes, there's a few examples out there, and those should be dealt with as individual cases. Some of them are probably justified, and most of them are not. But usually, saying something dumb on the internet does not result in economic suffering for the person saying the dumb thing on the internet. But if you are an artist who is making who's making a lot of their living through their platform on the internet, losing people, like losing followers on the internet, losing that platform has a direct economic impact. So there is obviously a danger there that if that happens to you, if mass deplatforming happens to you unjustifiedly, is that a word? I don't know. If that happens, that has severe consequences. There should be, thought put into that. We're going to come to that in a minute. So there's that. The economic aspect of it is something that we have now, and we need to talk about we need to talk about the other side of that. The other side of that is that if I like an artist, now we come back a bit to this separating art and artist thing. If I like an artist, I want to support them. If I dislike an artist, I probably no longer want to support them, right? And we come to that point of like, how does that work with someone like H.P. Lovecraft? And Ola said that. It's like, the guy's no longer alive. So if I still, support him by reading his stuff, he doesn't get anything from it. Now you can extend that and say, yeah, but there's some of his stories that, propagate racist ideas. So if you buy that and tell everyone about it, other people read it and these ideas spread. I'm not going to go into that area today because that's another can of worms that I don't want to open today because I already opened too many and it's already not making much sense, is it? All right. Oh, yes. And this is another thing, like with social media being the big thing that it is nowadays, is that having a platform online is a vital component for a lot of artists to promote their art, to make their money, to live as artists, whether it's in the music business or as an author or anything else, like visual artists, a lot of them, right? That's a vital thing there. And I guess it means that people who are in that line of work need to be very careful about what kind of thing they put online, because suddenly your personal profile, if you want, like, is no longer just your personal profile. That's the thing, is like it suddenly once again is part of your business because it's not fully separated. And I guess that's the idea that people like J.K. Rowling struggle with, apart from obviously the fact that she doesn't understand how the internet works because she's too old for that shit. But, the point is, it's not just Joanne R. from somewhere in England posting dumb shit on the internet. It's also the author of Harry Potter. So there's the feedback there is very open. So that's something that artists in general, like I guess every one of us on the internet should be aware, is that the tighter the connection between our personal platforms and our ways of income is the more our personal platform becomes not personal but becomes actually part of our business, which comes with other responsibilities, because you wouldn't do stuff with your business that you would maybe do in a situation of anonymity, and that's good in a lot of ways, but we just need to be aware of that. And my feeling is that this will become easier and easier over time, because social media is something that a lot of people that weren't basically born into it need to figure out and learn. A society needs to learn how to deal with the new media. That's no matter which one it is. We need to figure out how to deal with newspapers when they came along. We need to figure out how to deal with radio when it came along. We need to figure out how to deal with television when it came along. Now we need to figure out how to deal with this fucking internet out there. And then we need to start figuring out how to deal with social media, which is a separate beast from just the internet. So that's just something that I feel will change over time as people become more aware of the linkage between their personal opinions and their personal platform and their business. I don't want to use the word brand, but all these internet young social media kids use brand, and I don't want. But yeah, basically that's it. At the point where your personal platform becomes your brand, it's a business, and then you need to think and act like a business in that area, and you're no longer anonymous. And that's where the economic part comes in. Now we come to image. Image is the next thing, building block in that whole mess that we have there. And I'll try to, tie it back all together at the end, I promise. So image and self-image, because, and this is a cynical view, and there's obviously more to it, but for a lot of us, me included, the internet and social media is very much about presenting an image to the world. Obviously, because what we do in life always is about presenting an image to the outside world, which we hope is close to the image that of ourselves that we have in our heads. Most of the time it's not, because, yeah, that's just not the case. But we always present an image. In everyday life outside, not just the internet, we choose which kind of clothes we wear. We choose what kind of cologne we put on, if we do put on any scent. We choose our hairstyle, all that shit. We do that every day in life, whether we go into a bar, whether we go to work, whether we sit at home on our couch. We do that all the time. Now, social media allows us to manipulate that image in ways that going outside doesn't fully, because yes, we can pose when we're outside somewhere and all of that, but the people that see us outside, that see our image, they are still very free in which parts of our image they approach, which views they take, which perspectives they take, right? Social media allows us to manipulate our image much more, because we can choose which pictures to put online. We can actually choose which sentences to put online in videos or in, what do you call it, like tweets or whatever. We can do that. We can really build an image much more. Now, the danger there comes in separating the image on the internet with our self-image, or being aware of the fact that what we put out there is not necessarily the person we are, but more the person we want to be, in a way. And there's a lot of stuff in there that we should probably figure out as people, and we don't. But what it also means is that in a medium that is more politically, has a more political aspect to it than, say, just posting pictures of cats, for example, Twitter. Our political statements are also part of the image and self-image, in a way, that we project. Now, add to that the idea of social dynamics. We have friends on there. We want our friends to like us. We then assume that all our Twitter followers are also our friends, in a way. And So we want those to like us as well, and you suddenly get mob mentality. So suddenly, if one person that you have a lot of respect for, and this comes back to the platform thing from earlier, it's like, if a person that you have a lot of respect for calls out someone else for something, and we realize that, because it's not just a personal calling out someone, it's on the open market, and this will be like another thing that we need to look at, I guess, which is public versus private social spheres. The point is, we realize that we want to be liked by those people, so the impulse to join in is very high for us, right? So we see someone doing something that maybe I personally don't think much about. It's like, it's a dumb joke. I think it's a dumb joke. Fuck it. Someone else sees that dumb joke and says, that's problematic, and calls that person out for that, which is totally their right. But it then might motivate me to just do the same thing, because I want to be liked by the person who just called someone out. And if you go back, and this is important for me at least, it's like, if you go back, that's the same thing that happened on your fucking schoolyard when you were in primary school. All the time. It's just that the schoolyard is now the internet. It's much larger. And that brings us to the point where, someone does something not super smart. A few people are really ruffled by it, call them out for that. Suddenly all their friends join in because they want to be liked by them. And suddenly you have like half of the internet piling onto one person. That just happens that way because we are not aware that this is no longer the schoolyard and all our friends, but it's the internet. And those people aren't necessarily our friends, but just people that we have contact with on the internet. And this brings me to the public versus private social sphere thing, which is vitally important there. It is exactly the fact that we are not, a lot of people, like older people, I feel, me kind of included. But I feel it much more with like the generation above me. The point is, and this comes to a lot of like politically problematic or fraught language and stuff like that. In a very close circle of friends, a lot of edgy jokes and language is permissible in a way, and not permissible like on a moral level, but you can get away with that because you know your specific friend group. You know what kind of things work with them and what kind of things don't work with them. You know what kind of bad jokes you can make about some person's I don't know, all kind of personal stuff, because you know that person. If you cross that boundary, that person will tell you. You will then apologize and continue your friendship. That's how friendship works. It's like you have you can make jokes about your friend drinking too much alcohol. It's probably not healthy in the long run, but you can make a bad joke about him drinking too much. But doing that on the public, making it more general, and it can become quickly like shaming everyone with a drinking problem, for example. Same with weight problems or whatever. Right? See, that the point is that these things, and it gets even more problematic with the usual, like when we cross into like, I don't know, ableism or racism, especially racism. It's like you have so many people like, yeah, but I can say the N-word to my black friend. It's like, well, probably not. It's not exactly a good thing to do that in general, but if you and that one specific other person have agreed on you using that word for whatever reason, that's fine. That doesn't mean that it's okay to use it on the fucking internet where everyone can see it, because the internet is public. You don't do these things. You don't go out on the street and yell it and then complain if someone else takes umbrage. No, you don't do that. It's like your friend circle is a closed social circle. And the internet, even your followers on Twitter, are not your friend circle. They're a different place. So Joanne K. Rowling being transphobic and having transphobic opinions is okay, because opinions are not illegal. Her spewing them to her, I don't know, 3 friends in the local coffee house or whatever people in Britain have these days is still not good, but it's also something else, because it's only like her three friends who maybe tell her that it's dumb or not or whatever. Her spewing that out to 3 or 5 or however fucking millions followers she has is a different thing, because now it's like her standing in the street or like at Speaker's Corner and yelling it out to everyone. And suddenly the idea of getting backlash on the internet I feel doesn't come across as this, like the internet is so evil. It's like, you wouldn't do that fucking thing on the street with a megaphone, would you? And that's the other part there. So our self-image drives us to piling on, or like develops this like dynamic, this like social dynamic of mass dynamic of that can go wrong, because it's an open thing now. And the fact that a lot of people on the internet still struggle, especially older people, and that's the other thing, like a lot of artists that we deal with are not our age, but sometimes older and not as, conversant with the internet technology at this point. So there's that. That leads to these huge shitstorms and everyone having to pick a side or feeling they have to pick a side. Although, just be aware, you can just always not do anything on the internet. You don't have to defend your favorite artist on the internet or attack them because they said something dumb. No, you can just like not do anything. That's the smart case in there. The idea of having to pick a side is completely constructed. It's completely artificial. It's not necessary, is, I guess, the way out of this dynamic. But it will take a while for us to realize that, I guess, that you can also just not do anything. All right, now let's come to the last bit, which is the feeling of betrayal. And then I'll try to tie it all up. The feeling of betrayal is super important. I feel it's a big thing, especially with the Harry Potter thing there. I'm talking about the Harry Potter thing from the outside, though. I've only read the first 3 books and I didn't like them. Yeah, that's how I am. But the point is, Harry Potter was super fucking influential for a lot of people in their formative years. A lot of people read that as kids. They grew older with Harry Potter and Hermione, or whatever her name is, and the crazy guy with the red hair and all of that. They did all of that. So that has been a huge part of their, like, building their personality, right? That's important. Like they did their like which Harry Potter house, like Hogwarts house, argue tests and all this bullshit on the internet. They identify very closely with specific pieces of art. I do the same. For me, those are other books, it's other music and whatnot. But it's part of who I am in that like weird subconscious narrative of what makes Raf for me, right? And if suddenly that bit is taken into, and at the beginning, and this is the part, is like J.K. Rowling, the author, was always sort of semi-present in the background. She gave interviews and whatnot at the time because she's still alive, so she is connected to Harry Potter. And if she then does say something that goes very much against the general, opinions, or not opinions, but, worldview of people that have been fans of her work and sort of her as a person in a way as well, that feel very much emotionally attached to that property. And Harry Potter is a property at this point. If so, you feel betrayed by someone like that. It's a, like, I had the same issue recently. That was a big struggle. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's like, but it because it feels like a personal attack on you. It's like, so if I felt all my, like, if Harry Potter is such a large part of my personal backstory, of my experience, of the person, of the things that make me the person that I am today, and suddenly all of that gets tainted. It doesn't, get completely taken out, but it gets tainted in a way. And depending on what kind of person I am. That taint can be more like a complete wound, or it can be like I don't care much or whatever. But it questions me as a person, and that's where that anger comes from. That's where the rage comes from. In a lot of cases, right? That's vital there. That the anger and rage that comes from being questioned as a person, because that then goes beyond just the image that I put on the screens in social media. It actually goes to the person that I try to be when I'm all alone with myself, and that hurts. That fucking hurts, and that makes people angry, and that then can lead to highly problematic overreactions that in a time before us just typing shit online and not thinking about it, because we had to as human beings find the clay, form a clay tablet, scratch our cuneiform in it, bake the whole thing, and then send it to whoever we wanted to attack. That whole time of like reason to set back in has been taken out in a way. Although on the other hand, if you're still angry, a clay tablet makes a great weapon, so you can actually physically smash the person you hate, smash that on their heads, which I don't encourage at all, because anyway. And there's some wonderful curses on cuneiform tablets, trust me. Not where I wanted to go. The support thing, though, is what I want to come back for a minute for, like a last personal couple of anecdotes, and then I'll try to tie it all together. All right, the personal thing there is, as I said, I run a music label. Okay, let's do first the Harry Potter parallel thing. For me, like one of my favorite bands of all time at this point, one that has impacted me on a very personal level a lot of times, is the band Manila Road. And I do love them very much. I've booked one of their shows. I've seen them countless times all over the world. They've been hugely important to making me the person that I am today. And when, like, last year around the American elections, their singer posted a lot of dumb shit on the internet, on very political, problematic posts, right? Because, I mean, I'm not from there. All of that is fine, but once it borders, goes into the conspiracy theory, whatnot, almost civil war, inciting people to violence, bordering that territory, I feel personally betrayed, because suddenly that's like, I know that person, I've met that person before, I feel betrayed. And that's something that will definitely haunt my enjoyment of the parts of the music of those albums that he was involved in the future. And I don't know how to deal with that. Like, I don't know how to deal with it when I don't know, meet him again at some festival. It's like, how am I going to deal with that? That's a personal thing that I need to figure out. So there's that. On the other hand, and that's once again like the art and artist things, like I do run a record label. I deal with artists. There are persons behind that, and obviously I need to deal with the persons as well. And how would I personally react if a band contacts me and I listen to their album, I really enjoy the album, I really enjoy the music, it's great music. And then I check who the people are that made that music, and I realize those are people I really don't, agree with on a lot of levels. Now, up to a certain point, that's fine. You don't have to have the same political, social values as me for me to work with you, because it's still some level of professionalism. But on the other hand, since we're talking underground, but I'm not making money from this shit, is what I'm saying. It's like, if I put my money out and stick my neck out for your music because I believe it's great, I'd also really appreciate it if you are nice people to work with and are people that I want to support on the personal level. So there's that aspect for me as well, where with each artist I kind of need to figure out, do I feel comfortable with the things those people put out there on their platforms? And do I feel comfortable with that kind of thing? Do I feel comfortable with the behavior they put out there? And that's my personal responsibility that I need to figure out case by case. And that's the other thing, is that it's a case by case thing. Sometimes, someone comes to you and is like, you did a dumb thing like 20 years ago. And that's fine. People change. And sometimes you say, you did a fucking dumb thing 20 years ago. That's maybe not something I can forgive you even now. That's has luckily not happened to me yet in that area. I kind of dodged a bullet there recently because I was too slow in answering emails, which, sucks. But that would have brought me to a very personal problems, like how do I deal with that question? Well, anyway, let's try to actually put this all together and try to make sense of it. All right. Separating art and artist is not possible as soon as you know a single thing about the artist that does not pertain to the artwork. It's just not possible because you cannot unthink, or you cannot unknow things that you know. Well, unless you get drunk or whatever and forget shit. But that's the first point. Art is an emotional thing. Like, our art appreciation is an emotional thing, and we never have full rational control over our emotions. So our art appreciation will obviously always be influenced by our personal art appreciation, will always be influenced by the stuff we know about an artist. And I have to say this, I kind of should have said it at the beginning. This is layman's art appreciation. I'm not talking about academic study of a specific piece of art. There, obviously, you can try to separate the art and the artist in a much more clearer way because it's a rational discipline. You have tools and so forth. You don't have that when it's just like, do I enjoy this piece of art? Or yes or no? What does it do with me? And that's what I'm talking about here, because that's what we are here on YouTube and whatnot. This is not art. This is not art history class. This is not literature class. So once again, it's emotional. We can't control our emotions fully. As soon as we know shit, it will influence our emotions in a way that we can't control. So we can't separate the art from the artist completely. The amount of impact specific pieces of knowledge have on our art appreciation is a very, very personal thing. It's because it depends on at which point in our lives we actually read a book, listen to a piece of music, watch a specific painting for the first time, then what, and so forth. It's a history that we have with a piece of art. It's a relationship. I think relationship is the best term, actually. It's like we have relationships with pieces of art, whether it's music or books or whatever. And those are a mixture of the stuff we know at a specific point of time, plus all our emotions at that specific point in time. So these things change, and we have only a limited control over how that relationship develops. That's just the fact with people and with pieces of art. So separating the art from the artist fully is just impossible unless we know nothing about the artist, and then basically the art and the artist are the same thing. So that sort of doesn't make sense. All right, there's that. Now, in times of the social medias out there, we learn much more, whether we want to or not, often much more about the artists that produce the pieces of art that we appreciate, the books we read, or the music we listen to. That means that these things have a much larger impact on our media consumption. On the other hand, our media consumption is part of the self-image we project out there through our own platforms. We all have those, right? So media consumption and media appreciation becomes much more of a demonstrative thing and much less of a personal thing, like, at least for a lot of people. So knowing stuff about people has an impact on how we appreciate art, but it also nowadays has an impact on what we then also project out about that piece of art, or if we project anything out on that piece of art. Then the social dynamics of wanting to, you know, be friends with specific people and so forth, which is also part of that self-image kind of thing we project out there, but goes deeper because we want to be liked by people and so forth, then means that we might project our art, you know, post opinions on pieces of art, on our appreciation of that art that we would probably otherwise not put out there. That can lead to a massive loss of face, thus followers, thus platform, and thus even economic, loss of money for artists. And that's the problem there. The problem originates from the fact, on the other side, though, that artists need to separate their personal platform from their professional platform. Otherwise, those two will be connected more and more. And what they say personally has an impact on how their, professional art is received by people. Received is the word I was looking for. That means people need to be aware of the fact that the internet, even though it is their private profile on whatever social media platform we're talking about, is not private. It's not your two friends in your living room that you're making a problematic joke to. It's the entire fucking internet. Plus, with platform comes responsibility. That goes for all of us. It's like, if I am an artist with 3 million followers and I say something dumb, that has an impact on 3 million people, possibly. If I, on the other hand, have like 300 people and say something dumb, it has an impact on 300 people. But that's still an impact. And that may then, start that kind of avalanche of social media problems that you get in so-called cancel culture, which once again is not a thing. That being said, be fucking nice on the internet. Don't insult people, don't threaten people, and so forth. Also, if you have to say something personal, say it personally, in a way, because, blocking personal private messages and stuff like that is the only way that people on the internet can actually sort of filter stuff, I guess. So yeah, that's like the thing is, like, the internet is real life. Don't do shit on the internet that you wouldn't do to people in person. And if you feel threatening people in person is okay, no, it's fucking not. All right? So that's my random thoughts on cancel culture and separating the art from the artist. I probably have more thoughts on it once I switch up this camera, but that's a different thing. All right, I'll talk to you later about something else. Until then, cheers.